what I have said to you guys, if you've been around me for any length of time, you've heard me say this because it's a life's philosophy for me. And that is, it's all about identity. If you know where you came from, your history, your parents, your grandparents, there's a lot of people who don't know where they came from. They don't know. I got friends that have no clue who their dads are. No clue. And that's sad. I mean, it's a reality. You make the best out of it. It's not your fault, but it's sad. But if you know where you came from, you know who you are, know a little bit about your ancestry. And even if you don't know your immediate ancestry, you should at least know your history, like your American history or the history of the place where you live or where you came from. Know a little bit about these things and know it in order to find some dignity in it, okay? So, I know that my grandfather migrated to South Carolina from South Mississippi. I know he was an engineer. I know that, that's on the paternal side. I know these things about. I know my maternal grandfather, he was in Georgia and he came from Virginia and he came from a farm in Virginia. He came down, he was in the Army and all, I could go on and talk about what they did and who they were. I know these things and I knew the men and I learned things from them. And so it gave me a sense of identity. So if you know where you came from, you tend to start knowing kind of who you are. Because the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree a lot of times. Now, again, you might say, well, my grandparents were assholes. Well, again, look at your history with the intent of finding some dignity in it. So if your grandparents were assholes, you have the ability to change that trend in your family. You know what? Change it. And so now you look at yourself and say, well, I don't think I'm an asshole. Well, good. That's something you learned from your history. You learned what not to be. You may learn what to be. You may learn what not to be. I hope you're following me because I'm giving you some nuggets here. People pay me thousands of dollars to know this stuff. Tens and tens of dollars in beliefs. But if you know where you came from, you know a little bit about who you are. And then as you get comfortable in your own skin, I know I could never play in the NBA. I played baseball. I knew I was never going to be a Major League Baseball player. I played some high-level baseball, but it never, I knew my limitations. And I knew I was never going to be a rocket scientist. I knew my limitations, but I was comfortable with that. And so I found my strengths. I knew who I was. If you know where you came from, you know who you are, you know where you're going. We live in a generation, here's the point of all this. We live in a generation where we have young people who have come along. They've been told, first of all, the first lie in this weird-ass parenting philosophy that we embraced a long time ago was that you can be anything you want to be. No, you can't. No, you can't. You simply cannot be anything you want to be. Now, you could strive to be many, many things, and you can strive to be better than you are, and you can strive to accomplish, and you can shut up the naysayers, and you can accomplish many, many things. But now it's being reinforced with this, TikTok reel generation that has told you via social media, and I spell it out in this book, right in the very first few pages, about how social media has been our enemy, especially for our kids, because it's told you that everybody has some element of being famous, and they also have this opinion that is supposed to be valued because you put it out on a platform and you've got all this reach with your speech. The problem is it doesn't make you be responsible with the things you're saying and doing because you're doing it for the likes, you're doing it for the reactions, you're doing it for the responses and the comments and the shares. That's not real life. That is not real life. That's why I tell people all the time who send me a message. I might make a post that's an entertaining post, or I make a post telling people not to be depressed or don't kill yourself, or I do all of these things, right? Because I feel responsible with a big platform to put this messaging out there. People start sending me messages. Oh, are you okay? Or is this what does this mean? It's like, don't interpret reality from social media. It's social media. We're having a conversation. We're putting things out there. It's not written in a granite stone and put somewhere in a monument garden. It's a social media post. But people have started putting all of the emphasis on that as reality. And so it's lied to them. And so now you have a generation of kids out there who are believing lies. They're believing they can just go out there and be whatever they want to be. No, you can't. And then in order to be cool and trendy, you just say, well, I'm going to identify as this. You haven't gone through the trenches. Let's talk about it. So you want to identify as LGBT. There are people out there who have literally struggled in their life with their sexual identities because they didn't feel like everybody else around them. You haven't walked that path. For you to assume that about yourself is terribly hypocritical. It's mean. It's very assholey to do something like that, to just be cool and say, oh yeah, I'm gender fluid. There are people out there who legitimately struggle. There are people who take their lives over this. And you're just going to go out there and claim it in order to be trendy? You know, that's a bad take. It really is. And you should be better about yourself. But again, we've raised a generation that has no consequences to their decisions. We send them to time out, and then they come out with zero alteration of their behavior. And they go off and do this shit again. And now it's exponentially worse because they're just going to keep doubling down. You've heard me, if you've ever heard me on stage, I say timeout don't work. It just gives them 10 minutes to strategize about the next round of shit they're going to do to you. They just let them go in there and think about how to be worse. There was no behavior modification to the discipline. So now we have a whole generation of kids who go out there and do this kind of stuff, and say, oh yeah, I identify as this right here. That's a bad take. It's a bad take. And know who you are. Teach your kids who they are. Grandparents. I know there's grandparents listening to this show. Your kids are doing a disservice to your grandkids. Now, you probably did a disservice to your kids too, because that's what we do. We tend to love our kids a little too much sometimes, and we let them get away with a lot of things without the modification, without the correction. And I'm not saying go out there and beat the hell out of your kids in order to make them, the bunch of little walking around mumbling automatons that are scared of their own shadow and are scared of being who they want to be and express themselves. But I'm telling you, you need to get a hold of those grandkids, because you know what? Your kids are out there buying them everything on Amazon.com, and the boxes are showing up every day, and the kids think that the Amazon fairy just shows up with their fresh batch of crap. They have no value. They don't value the stuff that they own, and the reason they don't value it is because they've made no investment in it. You know what? People will never value that which they have no investment in. That's why when you just give kids everything, they don't have any value in that stuff. That's why they graduate from college as an LGBT whatever with a degree in underwater basket weaving and philosophy, and think they're supposed to come out and make the same salary that it took you 30 years to accomplish. And they're pissed off when the world doesn't give it to them. And they're screaming in the street when the wrong guy gets inaugurated. And they're burning down the Starbucks and throwing chairs through the window because they didn't get their latte right. This is the kind of world we've created, folks. So I want you grandparents, you granddads out there, introduce your grandchildren to consequences, just consequences. Teach them about where they came from and what their history is, so that when they grow up and they're 50 years old like me, they look back at you, granddad, and they say, you know what, I know who my grandfather was. I know what he came from. I know what he went through. I know what it was like in his childhood, and I know what his values were. Now, they may not hold to your values, but by God, at least you took the effort and took the responsibility to teach them. And every now and then, maybe when your kids aren't looking, introduce them to the song of our people, which is the sound of a leather belt turning loose from denim loops on your blue jeans, and beat their ass. It's amazing how that modification works real well. I had somebody say to me, CJ, I'm gonna call her out on this thing. CJ, my girlfriend, she's got 3 beautiful kids, and her youngest, he had him a little tantrum the other day. Kids do that, no big deal. And she got frustrated, and she was back and forth with him. And after it was over, I said, listen, next time, just try to diffuse the situation. She goes, what do you mean? How do I do that? And I said, well, he said some things that as soon as they left his mouth, he did not mean them. He didn't mean them. He said them in anger. You took them seriously. They hurt your feelings. And so then you felt necessary to hurt his feelings back. She didn't say anything wrong to him. It upset her. And so she responded. I said, diffuse it. I said, all you had to say to him was, hey, I know you didn't mean what you said. Now I want you to apologize to me. And then that's the end of it. Now, if you would need to put some punishment in there, do that. But again, there's a way to diffuse the situation to make every moment with your kids or your grandkids a teaching moment, and then you don't wind up with this kind of stuff. Now, again, I understand there's studies out there that say that every generation looks at the next generation and says, oh my God, we're screwed. But this generation, we're dealing with some real destructive behavior that when you get engaged with some of this stuff, it can kill you. Like again, it can kill you. People have always done really dumb things, but this ain't the drag racing. I mean, you go to the grocery store and eat Tide Pods. This is a generation you get. I mean, seriously. They're poisoning themselves. I didn't mean to go off on this tangent, but by God, if you listen to it, rewind it, listen to it again, I'll help you.